friends, welcome to Red Ice Radio. My name is Henrik, thank you for tuning in. Our website, as you know, is redicecreations.com, and it's great to have you with us along for this broadcast. Today we have Adrian Gilbert with us on the program. He is the author and co-author of a number of best-selling books, including the Orion Mystery that he did together with Robert Bauval, the Mayan Prophecies, Magi, Signs in the Sky, and The End of Time. He's also behind something called The Invisible College that we are going to talk a little bit more about later in the program. I have a couple of websites here that I want to give out right at the beginning. adriangilbert.co.uk, that's his main website, and then you can also take a look at the new website, theinvisiblecollege.net. Adrian is also going to be one of the speakers at the upcoming Alternative View 2 conference at the end of May in London. We here at Red Ice are going to attend the event, and a number of interesting speakers will be there, of course, as well. Dr. Len Horowitz that we talked about just the other day, and many more, of course. I'm going to ask Adrian a little bit later on in the program about what he's going to speak about at the conference. So if you're interested in attending the conference, want to read up a little bit more about some of the guests, about the other speakers, I want to relay you over to the Alternative View website. Simply go to avii.co.uk or thealternativeview.co.uk. And from there you can read more about the speakers, the location, dates and times, and of course get a hold of tickets as well. So with that, let's get this show on the road, as it were. We have an awful lot to talk about here today. Welcome, Adrian. Thank you very much for coming on Red Ice Radio.
Yeah, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you. How are you, sir?
I'm very well, thank you, Henrik. It's a pleasure to be on your radio show.
Thank you. It's wonderful talking with you. You know, I do know about the Orion mystery. I think that's primarily where I know about you from, so to speak. But I'm definitely looking forward to diving into a lot of the other projects that you are involved in and the things that you've been done in the past as well. And just to get things kind of going here at the beginning, I do want to talk about a line that you have on your website that reads like this. Based on the evidence of the long-term movement of the stars, Adrian believed that the world is currently going through its most major change for the last 13,000 years. And I think that a lot of people tuning into this program would agree with that and probably have their own kind of take on what this line actually means to them, or what this might be, this change that you're talking about. But I'd like to hear a little bit what you mean by that, Adrian. Maybe you can just elaborate for us a little bit on that.
Right. Well, it's a big subject, as you can appreciate, but it's very much connected with what's called the slow cycle of the Earth, called the precession of the equinox, which I'm sure you're familiar with. This idea of the poles do a little dance around the sky, which takes a circular movement. It takes 26,000 years, roughly. And sort of half of that period is 13,000 years. I shall be talking a bit more about this in perhaps a bit more detail as we go on. But we're now at a situation where this clock, if you like, this precessional clock, has got its hands pointing at the number 12, if you think of the face of a clock. Mm-hmm. And the alarm bell is ringing. And we're seeing this in different ways. We're seeing, for example, all this business about global warming, which I don't believe is being caused by CO2 gas, by the way.
Me neither.
I don't believe there's enough CO2 gas to really affect anything in the atmosphere. In fact, water vapor would be much more a factor in this. But I do believe there are changes happening with our sun. And it's the sun itself that's producing the global warming. That we have this familiar idea. We think of the sun as being like an electric fire. You switch on the switch and it's always the same heat coming out. Yeah. But of course it's a star, and it's a star that goes through changes and cycles. And we really do not understand how stars work. The Victorians believed that there must be, I don't know how many millions of tons of coal burning on the sun every moment for it to give out the amount of heat it does. We know that's nonsense now. We know that there isn't any coal on the sun burning, but we have transferred our ideas of technology, the idea of a nuclear reactor, to the sun, and we say, well, it must be like a gigantic atomic explosion. I think that's just as false. I don't believe that the sun is a gigantic nuclear explosion. It's actually undergoing processes which we do not understand, but which involve electricity.
Yes.
But that's a whole other subject area, which you'll appreciate. But basically, get to the idea that the sun is a variable star. All stars are variable, and it goes through cycles of its own. It goes through its own winter, spring, summer, and autumn. And so there are times when it gives out more energy and times when it gives out less. And it's a very, a slow cycle. And this is connected in some respect with our precessional cycle of the equinox. And then there's another process happening as well, which is to do with the stargates, which I will be talking a bit more about in due course, and the position of the sun at the stargates at the time of the solstices, which is what is happening now. So all these factors, the last time that the sun was aligning with a stargate at the solstices was the end of the last ice age, 13,000 years ago. So we can see that produced a major change. And we're going to go through a similar kind of change now. So that's what's happening, I believe.
Very, very interesting. So do you think that this, if we talk about the driving force behind this, I mean, the reason for the changes in the sun, do you think that there's a bigger force behind this? People are,
absolutely.
Talk about, John Major Jenkins, for instance, is talking about alignment with even the galactic center.
That's right.
Do you think that's right?
That's connected, yes. You see, we've allowed, our scientists have allowed a situation to grow where we view the solar system and the universe as being kind of very fragmented, just a random collection of rocks, kind of held together by gravity, but really not doing very much of interest, and just kind of sometimes, for reasons we do not understand, life appeared on this planet. Maybe it appeared on other places, who knows, but it's probably only microbes anyway. This is the kind of attitude. But when you actually start going into the subject in more detail, you begin to understand that there are patterns involved in the solar system. For example, why is it the moon is exactly the right size to eclipse the sun?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You think about that. I mean, where did the moon come from? We don't know, but it sort of comes from we don't know where, and it ends up in an orbit which is exactly the right distance from the Earth to create a disk that is exactly the right size to eclipse the sun. Now, that to me is something that's worth considering about. And then you think about the relationship between the cycles of the Earth and Venus, which, as you probably know, produces a kind of pentagram of conjunctions in the sky. Yeah, that I think it's 8 Venus cycles gives you 1 Earth cycle, 5 Earth cycles. Yeah, so 5 years you get sort of 8 cycles of Venus. This kind of 5 and 8, well, that belongs to the Fibonacci series, doesn't it? 1, 1, 3, 5, 8, 13, etc.
Right.
And that's all also connected with the idea of the golden mean, and you're beginning to see there's a pattern there. And then there's the so-called Bode's law you've probably heard of.
No,
the positioning of the planets that you can predict using a particular equation the position of the orbits of planets in succession. And this works very well up to the planet Uranus. Yeah.
Yeah.
And in fact, it's one of the ways that they were able to predict the planet Uranus, because they reckoned there should be one there.
Mm-hmm.
And sure enough, they found one. And there should be another one where the asteroids are between Mars and Jupiter. So, if you read science books, they'll tell you, well, there's just an asteroid belt, there's a bunch of rocks left over from the formation of the universe, the solar system. That's about it. Well, I think there used to be a planet there and it blew up. Something happened to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's probably why we got craters all over the moon and all over Mars. Probably why there's all this rubble floating around.
Why do you think happened there? Natural, artificial? Are we talking about pre-civilization people being around and messing?
Well, it could be any of those things, couldn't it? Yeah. I mean, I don't know, but I mean, you can imagine maybe it was a Star Wars situation where someone blew it up.
There we go.
Remember in Star Wars that there's that planet they blow up? I think it's in episode 2.
Absolutely. They blow up Aldebaran or something like that with the Death Star. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the Death Star comes and blows up a planet. Maybe something like that happened. Or maybe it was some kind of cosmic catastrophe where a big comet collided with it. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it looks to me like you've got the remains of a planet in the area where you would expect there to be a planet according to Bode's law equation.
Yeah.
So, and then you start looking at the larger view of galaxies, spiral galaxies which have a shape and they have these arms, and you wonder how they're formed. And then I don't know if you've visited any websites or had any research on this whole idea about the electric universe. Have you?
Yeah, absolutely. We've even had Scott. Oh, what's his? I'm forgetting his either surname or who he was on the program a couple of years back, and definitely we're very much following that. There's a very interesting thesis, actually.
Yeah, so absolutely fascinating thesis that what illuminates stars is electricity flowing through them, and you can dismiss once you start taking electrical forces into account. Right? I did physics at A level and a bit at university, and it always seems strange to me that electricity is terribly important when you're looking at sort of what happens in our world, because the electrical forces are far more powerful than gravity forces, as you probably appreciate. Gravitational attraction is tiny compared with magnetism and electricity. And yet, when they look at the universe and the cosmos, everything's about gravity. And then when the equations don't work, they haven't got enough matter to explain the attractions caused by gravity, they say, well, there must be dark matter we can't see.
Yeah,
invisible matter.
Right.
Matter that you don't know. We know it's there because the equations say it must be there. We can't detect it, so it's black matter.
Do you think that all that is bunk in regards to there isn't any dark matter?
It's like the old phlogiston theory, before they discovered oxygen, and they were inventing about phlogiston. Our scientists are phlogiston sellers at the moment as regards space physics, because most of them have never studied electronics. This is the problem. And you see, the other problem is, I think you probably realize from talking with people who are into this, is that when people like Sir Isaac Newton, who I have huge regard for, I regard him as the greatest scientist who ever lived.
And an alchemist, by the way.
He was an alchemist too, and he was also very deeply into the Book of Revelation.
Yes.
He's my kind of guy,
Yeah, he's even predicted the end of the world, I think, in 2060 or something like that.
That's right, something like that.
Right.
He's my kind of guy. But unfortunately, when he was working, they hadn't discovered electricity. Well, they probably knew a little bit about sparks or something, but they hadn't really got into it. It was people like Faraday who came much later, who were doing all the work, discovering electricity and inventing motors and generators and all of that, which we take for granted now.
Yeah.
So when he was formulating theories about the solar system, they didn't have any knowledge about electricity and electrical forces. This wasn't part of the picture. And unfortunately, that whole area of science hasn't moved with the times. It's still rooted in saying, well, you can explain everything in terms of gravity, which is nonsense. It actually is connected with electricity and magnetism. And when you apply those ideas, you begin to understand why plasma clouds take certain shapes, why galaxies take certain shapes. It becomes explicable. But, of course, this is a taboo subject, and, scientists don't want to go there because there's no grants involved in that. They might upset their peers. Yeah. They might lose their funding for their university. It mustn't rock the boat. These are the problems that exist, and it's holding everything back, not just in that one field. That's just one example, but in other fields like archaeology, for example. When Robert Bauval and I came up, wrote the Orion mystery and brought that forward. So Robert's ideas about the 3 pyramids of Giza representing Orion's belt.
Mm-hmm.